watching Conversations with Jennylyn, formerly known as The Jennylyn Show. And today, I'm very excited because I'm not in the studio in California, but if you look behind me, I'm on the beautiful island of Trinidad and Tobago and feel very privileged as I'm about to interview the former ambassador to Trinidad and Tobago from Holland, or rather the Caribbean. Is that correct?
That's correct. I always say the Dutch kingdom, and it sounds a little bit medieval, like I'm going to the office on a horse every day, but that's not the case. But we have a European part to the kingdom and 6 beautiful islands also in the Caribbean, so the whole is called the kingdom. That's why I use that word, the Kingdom of the Netherlands.
So I don't want to butcher your name, and I know you are Jules, but your last name I have difficulty pronouncing, so I will ask you to please tell us your name.
Well, my name is Jules Bijl, and I get questioned every day at least one time, but most of the time, a lot of times, how to pronounce my surname. So Ambassador Jules will be very fine, or was very fine, and Jules is okay in this conversation if you would like. Yeah.
Yes, I appreciate that very much. So you are originally from Holland, and that's why you're the ambassador here from Holland.
Yes, to become an ambassador for the Netherlands, you have to have the Dutch nationality.
Okay.
But our Caribbean people also have the Dutch nationality. One of my predecessors recently even was a lady from Curacao, for instance. So it's also possible for Caribbean people to become the Dutch Kingdom ambassador around anywhere.
Got it. And prior to moving to Trinidad, I understand you were the mayor of one of the cities in Holland.
Yes, I'm not a career diplomat, so I did quite a lot of different things. But the last thing is being ambassador, but before I have been mayor, I have been director of care companies, I've been city manager, I've been a lot, so
You've
to
been
say.
a lawyer too.
Yeah, my studies is laws, public laws and administrative law. I think I chose that subject because I'm always close to politics somehow. I am very interested in politics, and I like to work with it. Though I've not always been part of it, but from an observer role you can also work with politics. Yeah.
So I visited Holland many times and I really
Nice.
like it. Which part of Holland are you from?
I'm born in Rotterdam.
I've been there.
And it was more coincidentally, to be honest, because I'm born in '58, this was a little while ago, and in those days in the place where my parents lived, there would not be a hospital, and ladies used to deliver in a hospital. No, in those days in a hospital, so they had to go to Rotterdam. And I grew up in a city which is attached to Rotterdam, it's Schiedam, so I'm from the harbor world.
Got it. And so is that where you grew up?
I grew up in Schiedam for I think about 25 years. Went to school there in that neighborhood. I did my studies in Rotterdam, and I think if you would characterize my mentality, it would be very sober Dutch, blunt, and Rotterdam people are known that they are born with rolled-on sleeves, so that's also a little bit my mentality. I come for results and not only for fairy tales.
So what is Rotterdam famous for? Because I hear the name mentioned, a particular city mentioned often in conversation.
Yeah. Well, it used to be for many decades the biggest harbor in the world. So trade and maritime issues were the main capacity. I think it's now number 3 or something like that, because the growth in Asia made 1 or 2 harbors bigger than Rotterdam. I think it's still the most efficient port in the world. But it also is famous for modern architecture. So the background of that is not as pleasurable. It dates back to the Second World War, where the city was severely bombed. But it created a lot of space that had to be refurbished and redecorated. And also in during my lifetime, basically, you know, when I was young, all the ships would come into town, but as ships became bigger and bigger, and they needed more and more draft, we built some supplies in the sea, in the North Sea, to deal with big oil tankers and those kind of things. So now they don't come into town anymore. So all the warehouses that were there and the offices, they had to be reshaped into lofts, or either somewhere just torn down and high-rise buildings. So the modern architecture and the refurbishing of the city is also one of the key points, I think, at the moment in Rotterdam.
That's awesome.
Yes, yes.
I mean, there's so many beautiful places in Holland.
Sure.
One of my favorites, I like the city of Delft a lot.
Very historic, yeah,
and I
yeah.
know that Eindhoven is famous for the Philips
Yes.
Corporation, if that's what it's called now.
Yeah, it's a little bit the Silicon Valley of the Netherlands at the
Right.
moment. So they have a technical university. There's a lot of startups that happen there.
Really?
And yeah,
In
yeah, yeah,
Eindhoven?
yeah, yeah.
Oh.
Hundreds,
I
if
thought
not
it was-
thousands, yes. So it's,
Oh,
we used to have a technical university still in Delft, it's the older city you mentioned, but that's more into the engineering part of things. But
okay.
with the development of Philips being a high-tech company, they attract a lot of business that is also into the technical issues. And they got a technical university, so it's a center point, a focal point in the Netherlands now. Yeah.
Very interesting. So, what is next for Jules now that you are about to complete your term here as ambassador?
Yes, well, I gave it a lot of thoughts, because I said already, I think that I'm not a career diplomat, so this is a one-time posting only. And I am related to a ministry, but I never worked for that ministry. I never worked for any ministry at all. I came here after serving as director of the cabinet of the governor in Curaçao, and that kept me in the Caribbean in this capacity. But so there was an option to go back to a ministry I never worked for, but I don't have that ambition at all. I don't want to be in The Hague in a high-rise building, finding my way in open spaces with desks and putting my sandwiches somewhere in a locker. I'm not going to do that. I never did it and I never will do. And then I was triggered by a guy here in Trinidad, Nigel Salinia. And he very carefully built it up, and in the end he invited me to work with him in consultancy capacity. And well, I grew accustomed to that idea, and around him he has quite some interesting network, and also a lady in New York who has a lot of network over there, and she also encouraged me to walk that pathway. So I made a small arrangement with my ministry, and I'm going to be consultant. I will be up to some board, and I will also try to be a speaker or participating in conferences in some sort of way. And I think my lifetime will be exciting, and it is a bit of an accumulation of all things before, in terms of whether you are a mayor or an ambassador. It's not about the title, it's about your skills. If you're able to network, to connect the dots and those kind of things. And doing such thing on your own, in service of companies or governments, is quite a challenge. And I plan to focus in the Caribbean. I will live in Curaçao, so I will not leave the area at all.
I will live in Curaçao.
Yeah, so one week ago, my English colleague, my UK colleague, he asked me, "And Jules, what if it doesn't work?" I said, "Well, Tim, there's only one option. I will have to call my pension funds. And I have to drive to the beach every day, find myself a stretcher and drink a beer, and think about you working your butt off in Trinidad and Tobago. So what's the risk?"
I feel so bad for you. It sounds like it's going to be so terrible if it doesn't work out.
Well, I'm very glad you pity me that much, yes.
So I must ask you, what was your most memorable experience serving as an ambassador here in the island of Trinidad and Tobago?
Well, I think when I started, the embassy needed to be reinvented a bit. And that was an urgent matter that took up a lot of energy because we were running a campaign for the Safety Council in the UN. And that subject was neglected a bit. We're talking about Trinidad and Tobago, but I am accredited to 8 countries.
Right.
I'm accredited to CARICOM.
But you live here.
I live here, I reside here, but
Yes.
still I work in the other islands too. And so when I came in office, I was one of the hottest ambassadors because there were 8 votes at stake in the Caribbean. Wow. And if everything is as they say, we got 8 votes from 8 countries in my case. So it was quite a job. After that, I transformed more to the economic paragraph of diplomacy. Shell had entered Trinidad and Tobago just before 2015, and there's a lot of opportunities also in the region if you look a bit wider than only Trinidad and Tobago, but you look at Guyana, for instance. Yes. Suriname will surely follow. There's gas around Grenada or oil, so there's a lot of opportunity for Dutch companies in the offshore, etc., and the maritime industry. And being born in Rotterdam, having the maritime blood, I directly hit for that.
That's great. Well, Trinidad has a lot of history for me, and I usually promote it as one of the most beautiful islands in the East Caribbean, but I know you can't be partial because you represent more than Trinidad.
Yeah.
But since you were living here, I would imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong, that this island has had the most impact on your experience.
Yes, but don't forget I lived 8 years in 2 terms in Curacao before, so I already had some Caribbean experience. But Trinidad and Tobago is really something else. It is a very beautiful country. It's a bit more tense if you compare it with a few of the other destinations in the Caribbean who are a bit more laid back, I think. But very, very friendly people, and the green scenery and the warm welcome you get. And of course, I've been in a privileged job, you know, so you get the best of the best most of the time. But even then, I think Trinidad is very much worthwhile and very much worth a visit for any tourist, I would say.
So is the reason you have chosen to retire to Curacao the fact that you're Dutch, or the fact that you like it better? I'm sorry, I have to ask a few tough questions.
Yeah. Starting with retire, because, well, I may not be an ambassador anymore, but I try to be very active, so the retirement, I like to postpone that as much as possible, and for a length of time. You know, the Dutch Caribbean, like I said, I lived there 8 years. It's very convenient. I speak my own language on the island.
That's right.
I can drive for days and not make any mistake. If I go.
And why is that?
Well, I've been there 8 years, so I know the whole island. You know? When I ask something from my driver, and it will be, let's say, in the south, they know how to drive. I wouldn't in Trinidad and Tobago. So I'm very comfortable there. And, you know, in the beginning, when I would go to one of the supermarkets here, and I would have had a recipe in my head, there was always one ingredient missing. Not in Curacao, because you have Dutch grocery stores, so it is so convenient.
I get that.
And I have 2 lovely daughters who love the place very much.
Yes.
And at least one of them in the near future, I think she will live there too. So this is the best option for me, I think. And but I love to come back, and I will be attached to persons I named before, and we'll work with them, and we'll work with the governments in the Commonwealth. and I have a property in Curacao, so it's very convenient just to go there and open the door.
So Trinidadians give up on it. You can't steal him. He's going to Curacao. End of story. Tell us, is Curacao a bigger island than Trinidad?
No.
And is it more established?
No, it's 10 times smaller in physical size and also in size of population.
Yes.
It's not as rich as Trinidad and Tobago in terms of the high income standard Trinidad and Tobago became through oil and gas. Nevertheless, it's quite sophisticated, and it's part of the kingdom, so a lot of flow goes between Curacao and the Netherlands, and also in terms of techniques, entrepreneurship, retail, restaurants. You can find it at a very nice level at Curacao. Yeah.
I'm ready to go to Curacao. And
Well,
now I know someone living there.
Yeah, well, actually, very soon Caribbean Airlines will start to fly to Curacao twice a week,
That's wonderful.
and Suriname Airways already did so. So there's lots of opportunity, and I visited the current Prime Minister, but he was then the Minister of Economic Development a year ago, before the elections, and I invited him to invest more in Trinidad and Tobago in terms of touristic relationship, etc. Because I don't know any Trini who has been to Curacao who doesn't want to come back, because it's a lovely island.
That's great.
Yeah.
I've looked at pictures and I'm already interested
Yes.
to visit one.
Yes.
So, what message would you have for someone considering ambassadorship for Trinidad and Tobago or the Caribbean in general? What was the one experience you had coming in that no one could have prepared you for, that you want to alert someone else, not necessarily warn, but just alert them to be cognizant of before they come here in that role?
Yeah. Well, I think for Trinidad and Tobago, but for the Caribbean in general, relationship comes first. And we Dutch, we want to go from A to B in a direct line normally, and we don't want windy roads. But you need to take a bit of a windy road every now and then, and you really have to adapt to the culture where you're in and work with. You're not going to change that in another setting. You have to accept the things as they are, even if they are a bit uncommon for your own way of doing. And you have to embrace it and try to be part of it and work with it in a very good way. Yeah.
Are you a little bit excited, concerned, a little bit not so sure about the changes ahead? Or are you confident that you're ready to move into the next chapter of your life?
Well, I told you something about a stretcher, isn't it? So I'm quite relaxed about these things. And with all the support I feel around me, and not only from the Trini people I already indicated, but also from non-governmental institutes here who have to work with the Dutch Caribbean, for instance, or companies that like to set foot in the Dutch islands. Well, I know both ways, and also if you look a little bit further to the Netherlands and you want to go there and you want to familiarize yourself with how to deal with that and how to deal with the Dutch culture, because then you're on the other side of the picture. I might be helpful. So I don't worry too much, to be honest. I think I'm okay. I will be okay.
I'm learning to do that, not to worry, because it really doesn't accomplish anything.
No, it doesn't help.
Destroy some brain cells, that's for sure.
That's for sure. and my youngest daughter had an accident. She fell from a bridge. Not too bad, but she damaged her face a little bit.
Recently?
And yeah, last weekend. But
Oh no.
especially for ladies, I think to damage your face is an issue. But she said, I'm not going to cry over it the whole week. And I said to her, it will not help you, it will make it look worse.
Mm-hmm.
So you might formulate things as a challenge, but don't formulate it as a problem. You better embrace what's on the way ahead than try to remove it all the time, because it will take you far too much energy.
Well, she has a very wise father, and I hope she's going to heed the advice.
Yeah, well,
Good advice.
they are well raised, and my ex-wife and myself, we always try to make them think properly. So whatever situation is there, if you think properly, you will come up with a proper answer too. And I'm not from the penal law all the time, forbid this and forbid that, because there's always happening something else. And you have to react upon that in a good way.
So I haven't been keeping track of time, but I'm assuming we're somewhere near the end. Am I correct? So
Okay.
before we wrap up, what haven't I asked you that you feel is important, that's pertinent to the content we've covered, that you should leave?
Yeah. Well, I want to say one more thing, if there's time for it, because one of my next duties will be that I will be the chair of Zoosh Foundation. And Zoosh is a startup in the financial tech. It will be a mobile payment instrument, but the founder is very dedicated to give back to society and those kind of things. So we will look upon issues like empowering of the poor, empowering of women and youth, and wherever we work, it will come with projects. And I'm very proud of that. I like to leave the world, but especially my two daughters, a world with quality, where you can have a happy life, and where women, because I only have daughters, really do matter. So I'm very engaged to work with that. And I wish all my countries, but Trinidad and Tobago, of course, especially, all the best in the near future. All the ingredients are there, and I'm sure everybody will find its way.
Well, thank you so much. A man who has a passion for women and means that in a sincere way, in a respectful manner, is someone that I always admire, because I know that both men and women sometimes can take each other for granted and can make each other feel disrespected. But I think there's so much going on in the world now that's bringing awareness to the way we interact with each other and with people in general, regardless of your color, regardless of your religion. We should all look out to empower and make life easier and better for one another. So I thank you so very much.
Thank you for having me.
For your time and the privilege of this exchange. And I hope that our paths will cross again. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Yes. Thank you.
I thank you so much once again for watching Conversations with Jennylyn. I'm sorry you can't be sitting here almost on the beach at the Hyatt Hotel while I learn all the wonderful experiences this gentleman has had living in Trinidad. And I hope he has left you with something that will inspire, empower, and encourage you. And once again, I thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.